I've learned many lessons over the years. And one of them is learning when to say, okay, that's not working. Like you've made big investments in money and time, and you realize, okay, that's not it. And that is like really scary. It is so scary. And especially when you're on, your like third career in life and you have a family, it is so hard to do that. But I just had to say, gosh, that's still not right. And then I was doing more interior design, like through friends and family. I just started sort of building up.
Welcome to Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. I'm Natalie Walton, an interior designer, stylist, and best-selling author focused on an holistic approach to homes. Each week, I'm sharing insights and interviews about the creative process to help you enhance both your interiors and well-being, as well as provide you with the tools and resources to make considered and sustainable choices with all that you create. Hello everyone, welcome to Imprint. I'm very excited to share today's guest with you, interior designer Erica Johnston. We first came into contact when she took my course, the Styling Masterclass, and instantly I could recognize that she had a beautiful aesthetic and I was curious to watch her journey. And then lo and behold, a short time afterwards, she had her work featured in Architectural Digest. She's had her work featured in Domino magazine, and really wanted to find out more about her journey and how she has built her business in interior design. She's based in Northern California and has got a beautiful aesthetic, which I think you will really love and connect with. You can go and check out her website, and I'll put all of the links in the show notes. So please enjoy my conversation with Erica Johnston. Hi, Erica. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I've been wanting to have you on for a little while because we first met when you took my course, the Styling Masterclass. And since then, I've enjoyed watching your journey unfold. You were one day on, having your work featured on Architectural Digest, which was amazing. And I thought, okay, I've got to find out, what's happening, how is all this possible, and where, your next steps. Because I think a lot of people are really, they love interiors and they want to do interior design, but it can sometimes seem daunting of like, how do you get started? How do you get clients? How do you get publicity? All of those things. And really wanted to get you to share a light on that. Now, I do like to start at the beginning though. So can you just start a little bit more about your journey, where you grew up, what your childhood was like? Because I think it's often interesting to sort of see those threads and how they then show up later on in life. So tell us all the things.
Yeah, well, so I grew up in California. And, as a child, I mean, I love to read. I love to kind of draw and paint, but my parents didn't go to college. And so my big thing in life at that time was just kind of succeeding in school and going to college and doing something that my parents would be proud of, doing something that they weren't able to access. And, because of that, me with like 90% of my freshman university class, we all thought we wanted to be doctors or lawyers or go into business and, creative careers. I didn't even know there were creative careers. I didn't even know it was an option. I didn't have, parents to talk to about that kind of thing. And so I went in to college taking, science and math and, doing all of that sort of stuff. And then I ended up studying abroad and I realized, oh, I don't want to be stuck in a hospital like until I'm 40. And so I decided to just kind of explore other options. And after college, I did end up going like into business, but slowly, I started to move into more creative pursuits. And so I started to work on sort of the business side of design companies that were, designing products and web experiences and things like that. And I felt like, it's still, there's something inside of me that is not being fulfilled. And during that time, I was painting more. I was exploring kind of interior design kind of personally for myself. And then I ended up getting a job at a place called One Kings Lane, which was basically like a online home decor commerce site. And they had stylists, they did photo shoots, they had interior designers, they had all these people that, I had never met before and I'd never been around. And I just thought, wow, I really love that. And so, because it was sort of a startup, I got to like I would ask, "Oh, could I, shadow you or could I just be there for this?" Just to start to see what the other sides of the business did. And I realized, I really loved interior design. I loved like, you know, home decor products. I thought, maybe I wanted to design that. And I just, started thinking about these things. And at that time I was pregnant with my daughter, my second child. So I took some time off to, have a baby and really started thinking about what it was I wanted to do. And because I used to get like 50% off, I started buying like my first real pieces of furniture that weren't, like out of a box that you had to assemble. They also had vintage items on the marketplace, and I started learning more about antiques and the vintage side. And I just started exploring in my free time. So during the day I would work, and then at night, like feeding baby, I would you know, just learn and educate myself. And, after I had her, I decided not to go back. And I decided that, I wanted to maybe design my own products, and maybe I could sell them at One Kings Lane. And so I don't know, Natalie, did have you seen Pemberley Rose? So it's my home decor products for kids. So I have like bedding and wallpaper and prints and things like that. And so I kind of developed sort of this whole line. And my idea was I don't want anything that's throwaway. I want things that, you could use and mix in with what you have, but were sort of artistic. So I worked with artists on the prints, and it was all very like sketchy and different things. And so I found the manufacturing partners in Israel and India, and then and I worked with like a PR firm to get the word out. And it was great. And I loved the design process. I loved talking about it. And then I realized I hate fulfilling products. I hate managing operations. I was like, that's what I'm trying to escape. And I just, and it's one of those, this is probably one of my, I've learned many lessons over the years. And one of them is learning when to say, okay, that's not working. Like you've made big investments in money and time, and you realize, okay, that's not it. And that is like really scary. It is so scary. And especially when you're on, your like third career in life and you have a family. It is so hard to do that. But I just had to say, gosh, that's still not right. And, many conversations with my husband later. And I realized, I do love the home. I do love products. I love designing products. I don't want to mass produce them. I want to, it wasn't, I really, and then I started was doing more interior design, like through friends and family. I just started sort of building up. I took classes more on the equipment side of things. So like computer programs and things like that to help me, because I always had this sort of something inside of me. And I don't know if it's you just, you just have an eye. And I don't know, I don't want to say I have the eye because that sounds terrible. I don't want to say I have the eye. But you just something just it just kind of it just clicks, and it's hard to explain. Like it's not learned. It's just it's this innate sense of things and how they go together and how you can mix different eras, colors, textures, and it either works or doesn't. And I just feel that. But I had to learn the right process. I had to learn the right tools and things like that. And so through friends and family and learning the tools, I started in interior design. That's kind of how you start, because until you have like a good portfolio, you really can't get clients. You have to show them what you can do. And so it's, whether it's just a bathroom here, or maybe this living room here, or this set of shelves that I styled. And, styling, you know, that's a whole nother thing. That's I would say I'm a designer that dabbles in styling, and it's like it's an ongoing thing, but that's kind of how I started, and I just, I think that, and I don't have a PR firm that I work with, for interior design. Like, I think, I had a feature in Domino, for a bathroom renovation I did, and I just sent the email out to, like, the generic design email address, and holy smokes, they wrote back. Like, it was just I was like, "What?" Like, you just kind of put it out there, and then, and then I had a piece come out in Architecture Digest, and it's funny, like, once you have something out in the ether, some people start to contact you, and somebody contacted me for that one, and he was a PR person. He was like, "But I will," you know, it didn't have to be like an ongoing monthly commitment. It was like, I'm going to take what you have right now and I'll put it out there. And he put it out there and ended up in Architectural Digest. And, Natalie, I think for that, your class is indispensable. I'm probably due for another session, but, it's like, styling really, I think, really brought that particular project to life. It was, because it was a project that was very clean, and, it was all about bringing the outside in, and, balancing different client tastes, but it needed like that extra layer of like, it needed to sing, and it was really through like the pieces that I brought into that space that I feel like really helped bring it to life, the selection of ceramics and art and greenery and all of that. But anyway, that's how I got started. That's my journey. I might have taken a tangent off, but that's kind of how it happened. And I think it's like you just try to build up your portfolio, and try and, get projects out there, try to be seen, be on Instagram, even if you're, I don't know, I'm of the generation where it's really hard to be on Instagram. I have to force myself to go out there and like put my face out there, and it's like, oh, but yeah, that's my journey. It did not start I didn't know I was a creative, and I had to discover that about myself, and I had to make some scary decisions, right? And go from like nice, like, paychecks to like, no paycheck. Fortunately, like, I had a good partner that helped me and was able, not everybody could do that, but I think that's that was how I did it, little by little, and discovering more about myself. And yeah, I hope
Yeah.
that answered the question.
Yeah. No, 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 it does. I mean, there's so many things I want to ask you about in relation to that, and kind of just back up a little bit in terms of, when you said about with your other business, and you had to you got to this moment of realizing, you know what, this is actually not what I want to do. And I think
Yeah,
so many people get caught in that. And there's this concept of like sunk cost bias. So it's like you've invested all this money, you've invested all this time. And so you feel that, well, because I've done that, like it feels like a waste, or like you kind of hold on to something because of all the work you have done, rather than looking to
yeah,
like, well, what, for a start, I'm actually not enjoying it. And secondly, well, the longer I hold on to this thing that actually doesn't bring me joy, the less time I'm actually doing the thing that will bring me joy. And I think so many of us get to that point where it, like you say, it's a really scary decision. And I'm just curious for you, was there something that helped you make that decision to kind of go, no, it's time to let go? Or was it just an iterative process? Or, yeah, I'm just curious about how you actually let go, because I think letting go can take so many different forms, and I think people struggle with it in so many different ways, particularly when you've invested money in something.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I had to really be honest with myself. And because every day I would wake up and it would be time to get to work, and I didn't want to open my computer. I didn't, like, I found myself just not wanting to. And I had to force myself. And I was like, oh, this is what I, moved away from, and here I am again, and I'm getting that feeling, and it was, and I think, you do that a few days in a row, a few weeks in a row, a few months in a row, and then, you start to realize, like I'm not happy. This isn't it. Like, I cannot continue. And, I had to sit with it and had a pit in my stomach for a long time thinking about how do I talk to my partner about this? Right. And so, and then but I knew, like, I just knew, and I just lived with it long enough and kept recognizing the signs. And I knew it wasn't right. Like, yeah, I didn't want to look at shipping logs anymore, and I didn't want to, like, have, like, calls with Israel and India anymore, and about, and it was just, yeah, and I realized, like, I'm creative and I'm a hard worker, and, I'm organized and all of those things. If I start something, I finish it, but I realized, like, that this was just, I live in the more of, like, the dreamer part of creative land, so I like to dream and implement and then move on to the next dream, I think, and so it was just not, yeah, it's just it wasn't stimulating enough. I wasn't able to, um I needed, like, shorter timelines, and to be creative, I needed a different type of creativity, and I needed more
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering as well that because I think it's really interesting that as you mentioned, you've got this feature in Domino and Architectural Digest and all these other things. And what you learned from because I remember One King's Lane when it first came out and it was like huge, like it was really yeah, I don't know so much about it anymore. It's less on my radar, so I'm not even sure if it's still a trading company or not. But I definitely remember when it first came out because they did lots of collaborations, I think, with different
Oh, yeah.
people, getting them
Yeah.
to sort of do their collections. And I'm curious because I do think this whole process that you've spoken about that, you didn't have creative parents, neither did I, and like you were, you went down the safe path in terms of like, what you studied and all of that. And I actually started doing an economics degree, which I still don't know why I decided to do that. Like it was a time when, like creativity wasn't a thing that you did as a job. Like it was like people who did that were like artists. And it was like, I mean, that was certainly for me in my era. I don't know, if we're sort of where we cross over, but I think kind of having that exposure in a business that is within that world of creativity. And like you say, you picked up so many lessons from that time. And I'm just wondering, like, what do you think were some of the big things that you learned during that time while you were working there, in terms of like, having that confidence to then reach out to companies, or magazines or publications, or, having that confidence to put your work out there. What some of the lessons do you think you learned?
I mean, one key I was there from the beginning. Like, I was an early employee, and I think it was just like the hustle. I think, like, because at the beginning it was just Allie and Susan hustling, and they wore many different hats. And I think for me it was just, and sometimes they had to, fake it until they made it. And I just, and that's kind of what I learned. Like, it was, and we would try different things at One Kings Lane because it was a small kind of startup environment. We would, like, try one thing creatively and then see how it went. Oh, that didn't work. Now let's try this. And it was, and I also saw that it wasn't just right or wrong. Like, it was just this iterative thing. It was testing things out. And, I and then I felt like, oh, it's because I didn't know how that process worked, and I felt like, "Oh, that's something I could try, or I could do, or it's okay to make a mistake, or there's no right or wrong answer. It's just it's a process, right? And you pivot and you try different things." And I think those were some of my big lessons, and just work bloody hard. And just keep going and trying, and, yeah, those I mean,
Yeah.
those were the lessons.
Yeah, I think they're so valuable though, those lessons, like to kind of get that. look behind the curtain, as it were, you know what I mean? To sort of see that you do have to kind of sometimes scramble and you do have to hustle and you do
Oh,
have to,
yeah.
like mistakes will be made and you got to pick yourself up and you got to, because that was certainly the environment when I was working on a magazine. It was within a massive company, but each magazine was actually run almost like as its own little small business. And we had to get scrappy and creative, and things sometimes work, some things did it, and I think it's such an invaluable lesson. I've sort of, again, like I get people sort of writing to me and asking me about, like, well, how do you make it happen? And I think there's this idea sometimes that it's almost like they think people who have success, it's like, oh, the first time they try is just successful and that's it, and it's not. Like, you just have to keep trying different things until something sticks and something really resonates. So yeah, I think it's a really important lesson. So what about then in terms of getting your first clients once then you started to um, you know, put yourself out there more? I know you sort of said it was through friends and so on, but again, I
Yeah.
think that sometimes this can feel a little bit overwhelming, or people sort of don't even know where to begin. And I think so many interior designers do start that way within your network. So how's that worked for you?
Well, I also became a designer on a now defunct platform called Home Polish. And so actually there's quite a lot of designers that started out there that are quite famous, like Heidi Callier and Tally Roth and people like that. They were all home polish designers, and that's where I started. And so basically, they would, match you up with a client locally, and then off you go. And I think a lot of young starting out designers started that way, and that's how I started to get clients that weren't friends and family, and before I had kind of a portfolio. And that was actually a really good place. And actually, I still have um, one client now that I originally met through Home Polish.
Wow. Can you share more about that platform? I'm not familiar with it, or for any listeners that aren't, like what were you like, how did it work, and how did that help you, I guess, like get that experience and learn how to deal with clients?
Yeah, so basically it was a platform of designers, and they would match a designer up with a client. And then you know, it and that was it. But it was face to face. It wasn't virtual, it wasn't e-design. It was like in-person clients in your area. And that was a way for me to just start working with non kind of friends and family. And they handled the billing of the client. And then they would pay the designer like a portion of that. But it was just kind of a good way for me to just get out there and just start working with more clients and getting more experience under my belt. And I think now there are some platforms that do just e-design that I think are also good for designers that are just starting. They just to get your feet wet to start, because you need to practice, and you need to practice with people that have different problems, design problems, people that have different design tastes, or different, homes with different architectural features, because it's in design, it's not one size fits all. So it's really important to just start, working with clients, and even, you know, not just the design work, but even, managing clients' expectations and timelines and budgets. And, how do you work with clients that have never worked with a designer before? And how do you work with clients that have and have had a bad experience? And so, just trying to, get more people. And, I know other designers have like done projects for free, like a friend of a friend, just to start getting, more projects under their belt. And, hopefully maybe one of those might be a good portfolio project.
And so, how have you worked out what works best for you in terms of charging clients? This is something that I ask, lots of interior designers that come onto the podcast, because I think it's something that so many people struggle with, like knowing how to charge for your services. What model you use. Everyone seems to use a slightly different model. I'm curious to know, what works well for you, and what's your approach to that?
Yeah, so it's definitely okay to refine your charging model as you grow or as things change. And so I will say I charge by the hour, and then I charge like a kind of a percentage to manage like the buying and logistics process. And so, and then that's something that's changed a little bit. And I try to do flat fees, and I might still do it in the future. And I think it's something that the legal side is really important because I've been burned in the past where I've done a flat fee project, and I've been very explicit about, these are all the things that are included. And then you have clients come back to you and say, well, that wasn't my understanding of it. And so it is really doing flat fee is super tricky. And you have to be really, really careful, and you have to really get the legal side of it, I think, buttoned down. And so for me, I went back to the hourly model. And then, like I said, a percentage for managing like the, the purchasing of items and then the logistics of receiving those items. And sometimes that process can be really easy, and sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes you have to go hunt vendors down, and like, I had a sofa once. I think I went to the showroom or to the workroom like 30 times. And then finally, so it's like it's a way to kind of cover your time for those sorts of things. But yeah, and that's worked pretty well. I do give my clients, depending on the scope of work. Oh, I think it will be about, this many hours of work to do this. But I'm always very, very clear. And I say it multiple times throughout the process. It's an estimate because, design is an iterative process. Sometimes we look at three things, and one of those three things is the right thing. Sometimes we have to look at 30, and we have to look at 30 for many different items, depending on the client, because some clients need different things in order to make decisions, right? And so, even though you might do a 3D rendering of what it's going to look like, that's still, some people are able to make a decision based off of that. And some people need to make sure that they've looked at every possible item before they feel comfortable making a decision on a piece. So it's like you have to be a little bit flexible, and you have to make sure that you cover yourself for that time and are clear that it's, there's a little bit of give and take in that.
So, what do you use in terms of like technology as part of your process? What design tools do you use? What project management tools do you use? What works well for you?
So in terms of project management, I use something called Asana. And that is where I put in, like, I organize it by project, and we'll put in tasks, and we'll put in timelines. And, you can create like little Gantt charts and share them with your clients. You can assign people tasks, you can assign things to yourself. So I really like sort of using that because there's many, many different things going on in a project, and some things are higher priorities than others, and you have to be able to see across various projects to make sure you're always kind of ahead of the game. And I also use, I don't know if this this is like old school, but I also use a lot of Google Sheets. Like when I'm creating like paint schedules for clients, and I'm doing like we call them FFE schedules, so like um fixtures and equipment schedules, but it's really like products, and things like that. And so that's where I will like, organize all of that sort of thing. And then I use a lot of sketch. I like SketchUp for my renderings. I like to use it for floor plans, and I like to use it for renderings. I use CAD a little bit as well, but I prefer SketchUp. And that's what I use for my 3D models and all of that.
Do you outsource any of the tasks in relation to the design process, or any of the work that you do, or are you kind of doing you're across all of those different areas at this point?
I'm across everything, but when I have a lot of projects, I have some people that I work with to kind of help me deal with the design overflow for sure.
Yeah. And obviously we've touched on publicity and how important that is. I think that getting photos of your work is one of the most important things as an interior designer so that you can showcase and promote your work. And I'm also a big believer in that you kind of want to capture the work that you want to get so that the type of work you put out there, you might not necessarily photograph all your projects. What's your take on that, and how important has it been for you to get professional photography for your projects?
Professional photography is very important. But I haven't, I'm very selective about what I photograph. I don't photograph every project because I am in that phase of like, trying to, you know, curate a certain type of project. And a certain type of like, I actually don't necessarily like to stick to one look. I like to dabble in, different design styles. I find that super interesting. But at the same time, I think I do have, like, you know, I would probably never photograph a project that didn't let me use vintage. Like, so I wouldn't, because that's not, I really love to give projects a twist. And if I feel like it doesn't feel like me, then I won't photograph it. Because not every project is for your portfolio, and I think that's okay. I think it's just knowing which ones, and it's kind of a gut feel. I think for me, I think the ones where I've been able to flex my creative muscles a bit more and had a little bit more leeway. Then I think those are the ones that I've tended to photograph.
And how would you describe like your aesthetic, the one that, resonates most with you in terms of what you want to put out there? Like what's important to you in terms of interiors, the look and feel of spaces?
Well, I guess first and foremost, I want to make sure that the interior is in harmony with the architecture of the home. So it feels like it fits. And it doesn't mean that if it's a mid-century modern house, the interior has to be mid-century modern, but it has to be kind of harmonious with that in some way. You know, um, like, I probably might not put, like, a Louis the 14th chest in, like, a mid-century modern home, I don't like, I may one day, but I don't think I would do that right now, but so that's number 1, and then I really I like to mix styles. I like to mix furniture from different eras, and maybe the common thread is, like, some colors or, something. So I like to mix furniture. I like to bring in, vintage paintings and, interesting sculptures. And I like to really layer looks together and mix things up. Um, and that's kind of, that's really it. I mean, I think that it has to work with the architecture. It has to also speak to who's living there, because I think it's also important that it doesn't feel like it's out of a showroom, or that I went away and created something and it doesn't have anything to do with the homeowners, because I think that's really important. It has to be a reflection of who lives there. So for example, I have a project I'm getting ready to shoot, and the homeowners are East Asian. And so, I've like gone and found some, like, you know, vintage pieces from India that I've brought in. And I just like, they tell me they like, the jewel tones. And so I found a way to bring in kind of jewel tones in a way that is harmonious and works. And so I think it's super important that you get to know your client, that it's a reflection of them and you bring it in unexpected ways.
And what about your actual design process itself? So, you get a client, how do you then start bringing a home to life for them? What's your process in terms of the actual design process?
Yeah, I mean, there's basically three general phases that I think of in design. There's the discovery phase, the development phase, and the implementation phase. And in the discovery phase, I'm doing a couple of things. I'm getting to know my clients. I ask them questions. I also observe. like I observe them in their homes, and not like in a weird, creepy way, but I just take note. I take note of things. I take note of like what they're wearing. I take note of, maybe their handbag. I take just start to notice things about them and how they choose to spend their time. I also, some clients come to you with images, and then, I might show them additional images of things. So we're trying to get to a place where I'm getting to know them, but I'm also trying to come up with, um, a design, an overarching theme for the design. And so that could be like a mix of, you know, living room images, pieces of furniture, or maybe it's just like, random images with colors and textures and things like that. But we're trying to come up with something that reflects, you know, where they live, how they want to live. Um, because I think it's always a mix of that, right? They have some design problem or some functionality problem in their home that we're trying to address. So we need to have visuals to help us nail that, and then getting to know them. And then, once we have, and that's usually like, culminates in like a mood board and maybe like a few keywords of, this is what we're striving for. Um, and then I start once we agree on that, then I get into the development process. And so that's like, measuring spaces, creating floor plans. I start to develop, maybe a 3D model of the space, and, all of those things. And so that's where like, kind of the quantitative and like, more technical design things meet the creative there. And so we're developing the design, and I start showing things to clients, and we start, developing the materials in more detail, all of that kind of stuff. And then we get to the implementation phase, and that's where, we're like getting quotes. If we're going to do construction, we are getting quotes for different things, to, renovate a bathroom or a kitchen, or maybe it's like, quote to build this built-in that's part of the design. We start ordering furniture, managing, that whole just getting it done process.
What are like obviously a huge part of working on these kind of projects can be working with contractors, can be working with maybe carpenters or different sort of trades. What do you find, how do you manage that? Because obviously you're dealing with people who are, sometimes you're dealing with different people all the time, when you're working on different projects. How do you find, managing that? Because that's like a whole other language. It's a whole other, there's a different group of people you're dealing with as opposed to clients. And then you've got, the sort of the trades and the sort of the skilled workers, as it were. How do you manage that side of it? Expectations as well.
There. So I've really, over the years, I've really tried to develop a list of like tradespeople that I work really well with. But having said that, I'm sure it's the same in Australia, but in the US, it's like been such a boom for like construction and any skilled trade, like, trying to have a carpenter build anything has been really difficult. Getting furniture made has been really difficult. The timelines and the costs have all kind of exploded. So even though I had my people, I've had to expand that list and, work with new people just because I had to. And so, that is Whew, that is a whole nother thing. I mean, I think it's really important that you're really clear up front. Be as detailed as you can, like with your design, with your expectations. I mean, down to like what finish I want to use on a piece of furniture. I will like list out the specific product that I want to use. I'll like list out like check-in points that I want to have. And then you need to have a really frank conversation about lead times, because there are some, tradespeople out there that will kind of tell you what you want to hear to get the job. And then, 14 weeks later, it's like, oh no, we haven't started. And it's like, so it's like it's you get it's so no matter what you want and say up front, they might still do that to you, right? Like, and you just call them every day and you call them every day. And, I've definitely had that. I do as much as I can to ensure that process goes smoothly by reaching out, checking in. But sometimes it is out of your control because it is not your business, and you just have to be really open with your clients. And I think if you're trying somebody new that is not a recommendation, or even if it's a recommendation, doesn't mean that they're going to be a it's going to be a good relationship with you because you're new, right? They'll prioritize other people over you. So it's like just being really clear and open, with your clients about what's going on, and then just keep calling, keep visiting. Like, I just turn up and like, what's going on? Even during construction, like, you have contractors out there that are so good at project management, and they're so good at looping in designers at the right point. And then there are contractors out there, you just chase them. Like, you have the timeline, and then you have to go figure out and just be there, um, and make sure things are being built as designed, and sometimes you'll be surprised, and you just try to insert yourself, as much as you can to catch things before things go awry.
Yeah, it's a whole other skill set, isn't it?
Yeah,
um,
it
s-
is, it
yeah,
is.
yeah. I mean, speaking of skill sets, I mean, as you know, I mentioned at the start, how I came across you was through, when you joined the Styling Masterclass. I'm just curious. I mean, you've sort of mentioned that you started to learn how to do different software programs and so on. How important has investing in yourself and investing in your learning been for your growth as an interior designer? And what other, have you taken on other courses or programs to help you learn? How's that been important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a constant thing. So I do take courses, here and there. Like, there might be like new features and design programs, or there are new design programs that I want to learn. Revit. I'd like to learn Revit, because I don't love CAD, and so that's something I'd like to learn. Hearing about other interior designers' journeys, is really helpful, and hearing about how they think about design problems or clients or their process, I think is super helpful. I'm always, in addition to classes or listening to other designers' journeys, I subscribe to so many interior design magazines, but it's on my iPad, so I'm not cutting down trees. But yeah, I mean, there's like Australian Home and Garden, there's Home and Garden from the UK. Of course, there's Architectural Digest, and there's, like so many publications that I look at, Cabana magazine, and I kind of just consume, a lot of that. And, of course, I'm also always on kind of Instagram and looking at other designers and architects. And I think the neat thing about things like Instagram is that, you kind of get to see the process as well. Like, I I don't just like looking at, finished pictures. I like looking at like their interim construction and things like that. I find that all very interesting, you know. And I'm always looking up, how to do things. If there's something that I hadn't done before, I, do lots of research and, contact people out in the field, and do a lot of learning that way too. Like, I'm thinking about doing X. Like, do you have some time to talk about, how we could make that happen? And, I learned like that.
Yeah, no, it's great. And before we go into the final questions, I just wanted to ask you one more, which was, obviously this comes up a lot in terms of when you're designing, where do you think people should spend? And when do you think that they can sort of make savings on their spaces? What are the areas that you think are really important to prioritize, or the types of materials or the types of objects to prioritize? And, perhaps which ones do you think, you can be more flexible with?
Yeah. Well, I think, if you have a construction project, I mean, I think it's important to spend on the architectural interior. So like the shell, you need to spend on the shell. So I think that, like making sure that you save budget for built-ins and, you put in good lighting. And I think there are places that you can save and spend on lighting as well. I think need to be smart about that. Like, I think, for example, if you're I mean, there's so many companies out there that have really nice that are like, local handcrafted fixtures that you can get that look good. And I think it's just, balancing that out. Like sometimes I might say, okay, we're going to go with a luxury vinyl tile for your flooring. But of course, not just any luxury vinyl tile. It has to have like the right look and the feel and all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to save a little, and then we're going to spend a little more on your fixtures. So it's really thinking about the shell and what's the feature in kind of the shell of the room, right? So I think about that first and foremost, and then like I said, things like built-ins. And I try to tell clients, even if we can't buy all your furniture now, because we're going to do this built-in, like you're never going to go back and build that piece of storage furniture that will change your life. Like it's like one of those things that like, storage can be beautiful, but it's also going to change how you live. So it's important to prioritize some of those things, even if it means, waiting for the right sofa. I think also like when you're looking at furniture, I think my most important advice is to be patient. And, I think you don't want to be impatient and buy something that you really don't like. And then in a year's time, you're going to replace it. I think that, we have to be really cognizant of the planet and what we're doing and what we're consuming. And I think that, being patient and prioritizing things that you're never going to come back and do later that really help, you know, not just the design, but the function of the space are important.
That's great advice. Really great advice. Because I think, you're right. It's when you've got all of the, the trades on site, the contractors, the builders, all of that, like it's a big job to get anyone back. So you kind of want to
Yeah.
maximize that in terms of them being there on the place. And you can find so many of the other elements afterwards, that's,
Yeah.
and you can get really creative with that as well.
Exactly, exactly. I think it's hard sometimes for clients because they think like, "Oh, but it's supposed to be done. Like and I'll have flowers on my table when we're done." And it's sometimes yes, but it really depends also on budget. And if the budget's not there and we need to wait a little bit, like I counsel my clients, that's okay. Like that's okay. You don't it's not HGTV. Like we can wait, we're gonna have to wait a little bit for that, and that's all right. But don't rush because invariably they regret it. And and if I've ever let myself be talked down that path, I regret it too. And I think it's important just to, be patient.
Yeah, great advice. All right, let's get on to the final questions that I ask all of the guests on Imprint. And the first one is, which 5 words best describe you?
I'm a juggler. Mom, wife, designer, sometimes psychologist. So I juggle many things and many hats, and also my business too. I'm a creative dreamer. I think like I can be a bit shy, but I'm a hard worker. I'm a hard worker, and and I really also like I guess maybe I'm a ruminator too because I like to ponder hard problems. I don't. That might be more than five.
This is about 5. What's the best lesson that you've learned in your career, life, whatever it is? One of them.
I mean, I think being honest with yourself and then also communicating and over communicating. And
What's your proudest achievement?
gosh, I mean, I think I think I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of the life we have. Like we live a joyful life, and I'm proud that, and we also try to give joy to others. So I think I'm proud of that.
What's been your best decision?
Moving in a creative direction. I am a creative person, and I'm so glad I didn't get stuck um, in something that really wasn't for me.
In inventory.
Yes, yes, and fulfillment, shipping.
Who inspires you?
Gosh, I've been inspired. I mean, you inspire me. I'm inspired by like all women out there, stay-at-home moms, working moms, my own mom. I think, you know, we do so many things, and I think we do so many things that are often unrecognized, and we have so many jobs, real jobs, and the jobs that we don't get titles for. I think it's really inspiring, you know, other women out there, and all the women I've gotten to know in this career, I think really inspire me.
What are you passionate about?
Wow. I guess, just I think as I've gotten older, I've really been passionate about, I think I said it before, just joy, finding joy in life. And I think it's important to be happy and find your happiness and find your voice and, pass that happiness and kindness along to others. So I think that's really important, to be happy and kind humans.
What dream do you still want to fulfill?
So I would like to buy a country home or a chateau in France or somewhere else in Europe and renovate it. So I would like to go off and that is my dream. I would like to do that tomorrow, please.
Me too. That's my dream. um, what are you reading? What's on your nightstand or your coffee table? What are you reading at the moment?
Well, so I'm always reading design tomes. Like that is, I pre-order everything. I'm always reading design tomes. I have all of yours, Natalie. But in my like, winding down time, I'm actually reading something called The Discovery of Witches. It's a bit like it's about witches and warlocks, and I like to kind of let go, and like I think it's that dreamer side of me. I like to just, you know, let it go.
Have that switch off, just some kind of completely different thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. A
Yeah.
bit of magic is nice.
What are you listening to? Do you enjoy listening to podcasts? Otherwise, what kind of music do you like listening to?
Um, I do love podcasts. Obviously, I listen to Imprint. I also listen to, like Jeremiah Brent's podcast, Athena Calderon. And then there's all these like business of design podcasts that anybody in interior design or aspiring interior designers would find super helpful. So, like business of home and things like that. And music, I mean, I love all types of music. Like I like hip hop, but I also like really love the Smiths and Erasure and things like that. So I've got like a very wide gamut. And my daughter is into countries, and I kind of don't mind it. My daughter's 10.
Oh, so good. And finally, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Take your time, um, try new things, like don't be afraid. And I think get out of your head. Like just, I think for me, I was so stuck on, this is the path that I'm on. This is what I must do. This is how I get from A to B. And then I really, didn't take the time to explore, other things that might have been a better fit, early on in my career. So I think get out of your head, try new things, and don't be afraid. Just take some chances, take some risks.
So good. Thank you so much, Erica, for joining us on the podcast and sharing your story. I've loved hearing of what you've had happen next after joining the Styling Masterclass, and I look forward to seeing what you continue to create because I've loved seeing your work so far.
Thank you so much, Natalie. It's been a pleasure.
All of the links and info for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get a direct download of the latest episode. And I really appreciate when you take a minute to rate and review, as well as share the love with someone you know who might benefit from this episode, or on social media. If you'd like to access a range of free resources, come visit my website, nataliewalton.com. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast. And I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.